might be hurt.
In this painting, I was thinking in terms of combining candy.
I will if you make it first.
Hello, my name's Sean Robertson, manager of the Florissant Civic Center Theater. Welcome to On Cue. For those of you who have never watched the program, I'd like to share a little bit about what the show is and what we do at the Florissant Civic Center Theater. The Florissant Civic Center Theater has an evolving schedule of professional touring shows mixed with our own family theater productions specifically geared for children and young audiences. When we're not doing those shows, we are also home to many local community theater groups such as the North Winds Concert Band, the Hawthorne Players, and the Alpha Players. When we are not hosting one of those fine programs, we like to stay busy by renting out our space to groups interested in presenting the fine arts. We are also responsible for putting on the entertainment for the Music Under the Stars series, and we go out and seek out those fine musical talents for our free concert series that goes on in St. Ferdinand Park every summer. When we're not doing that, we're also providing entertainment for the Fall Festival and for the Valley of Flowers Festival that we put on annually here in May. Now, on the show, On Cue, we like to bring in members from those local groups to give a behind-the-scenes look at what really goes on some of these shows. Today, we're going to take a look back in time with the Hawthorne Players' upcoming production of Driving Miss Daisy. It's my pleasure to introduce to you two outstanding stars of Driving Miss Daisy, Nancy Crouse, who will portray Miss Daisy, and Archie Coleman, who will be playing Hoke Colburn. Nancy, Archie, thank you for coming out with us today. And before we start talking about Miss Daisy, I know you guys have worked together before, and I was hoping you could share some of your previous experiences with working with each other.
Well, I met Archie on stage almost in 2005. We were doing a first run production called The Last Days of Cafe Cafe.
Okay.
And I knew at that point I wanted to work with this man as often as possible. He was an absolute delight on stage, and I've had the privilege of doing that. Again, we did a show with Ken Clark directing us and others, including his wife Barbara, and we were trying to remember the name of the piece. We think it was Giving Up, Letting Go,
that's correct.
Something like that. But I costumed him a couple of times, including I'm Not Rappaport for Hawthorne. But the most delightful thing, besides our current project, I directed him as Troy Maxon in Fences, which I think he gave a stellar
It's a truly
performance.
masterful performance. It really
Indeed,
was.
indeed.
And powerful, and I had the pleasure of also working on it, but getting to watch you up on stage every day, and that's a wonderful show. It was a really outstanding production, and I really just liked being a part of it.
Right.
And
I think we were all very
Right.
proud of
yeah,
it.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. It was a marvelous experience for me, and just a great pleasure to work with Nancy as often as possible. As she said, we first worked together in The Last Days of Cafe Cafe, which was a very long show with a very large set that took about 6 hours to strike. So that experience was almost as long as the run of the play itself. but a great time, and glad to be back with her again.
And you are both, I would say, veteran members of the Hawthorne stage at this point. I mean, you've been in numerous productions. I remember seeing you in I'm Not Rappaport also, and you directed Fences, which we were just speaking, and you often wear many hats for many productions, not necessarily with just the Hawthorne Players,
True.
throughout the whole metro area, whether it's designing costumes or designing the sets or
Just giving a little paint here and there.
yes,
is
or
fun.
painting backstage or wherever you can help out. Have you ever played this role before, for Driving Miss Daisy?
I have not. I have very limited contact with the play at all. I had seen the movie many years ago and was rather impressed with Morgan Freeman's portrayal, but I had never read the script until I found out that Hawthorne was doing it, and I thought it might be something that I might want to look at, and it turned out that it was, and I'm happy that they cast me.
The movie Driving Miss Daisy, I believe, came out in like 1989 or 90.
That's correct, 89.
And Jessica Tandy played Miss Daisy, and
Right.
Morgan Freeman played Hoke. And Jessica Tandy might have. Did she
won
win the Academy Award?
She did.
Yeah.
She did.
That's
And Yuri, the playwright, won for best adaptation
Of a
of a
screenplay.
script to,
Okay.
to the movie.
How have you prepared to take on this role, or is there anything out of the ordinary, or?
Well, I don't think there's really anything out of the ordinary. We had a discussion last evening, and I think that for the most part, I'll say it properly this time, I'm old enough that I actually saw people in my life that were in fact Hulk Coleman. So it's there in my history, and I just reach back and see those people and try to feel what they felt doing this kind of work and trying to make progress as a black person in that time period.
Actually, what can you tell us any bit more about your background in theater and how you got started? And
Well, I've been doing this almost 20 years now. Actually, it's something that I always wanted to do and always found a reason not to do. And kind of, I don't know if it's a sad story, but I was caregiver for my mother in her last days. And after her death, I took it pretty hard, and I ended up in grief counseling. And in talking with the counselor, she said, "Okay, well now this part of your life is done. What are you going to do with the rest?" I said, "Well, I always wanted to be an actor." And she said, "Well, you can do that, but it's not."
Yes, you can. That's for sure.
It's not going to probably amount to much. So I took an acting class and went on an interview and was cast on that first audition, and I've been there ever since. So I like to think of it as the last gift my mother gave me. So.
Oh, that's a nice thought.
Yeah, that is a nice
really
thought.
All right. Really
When you're not, livening up our stage, what do you do in your free time, hobbies, or your job professionally?
I enjoy music. I listen to a lot of music, and that's across the spectrum. I love jazz. I love classical. At one point in my adult life, I studied cello for 8 years, and then I realized I wasn't going to be Yo-Yo Ma, and kind of put that in the closet. But I work for U.S. Bank. I'm a business operations specialist at the facility in the tower downtown. And I go there so I can go to the theater. It pays for my life so that I can act. I love acting. It's where I feel the most alive, I think. So.
Well, Nancy, let's talk about you here. An established star throughout the St. Louis area, both on stage and behind, as we said, and whether it's from the director's chair or the costumes or sets for many productions here in Florissant and in the area. And I'm sure I'm leaving something out.
Oh.
Lots. Now, I know you have an extensive background in the theater, and why don't you tell us what you did before you were here in Florissant?
Okay. Well, my first involvement with theater was in my backyard, organizing the children in the neighborhood, and we put on plays. And then I wrote my 4th grade play and my 5th grade play, and I was, I don't know. An only child, I think, lives in an imaginary world, and I was an only child. But my parents didn't quite approve of following theater, so I found a way around it, because if I majored in English back there in the 60s, I could do this comprehensive theater kind of minor that wasn't even declared. You know, nobody knew that I was all that involved in theater. And so I graduated with a degree so that I could teach. And I never liked the adage, those who can do and those that can't teach.
Yes.
Really offensive to me. So I really wanted to have a professional career, I thought, and then teach. But the cards didn't lay out that way. So I taught and I directed in my high school for 33 years and loved it, and I loved all the students I had, and they taught me as well as I taught them. And my husband was my mainstay. He was my master builder.
You've had some students that have gone on to do some bigger and better things.
Right. I've had several. One of them invited me, well, he didn't know it, but he was on the Meredith Vieira show. Everett Bradley was a musical director there, and they wanted to honor her former teacher, and then they decided they would include Everett's as well. And so unbeknownst to him, they tracked me down. It was really a tracking down, and they called my daughter at her school, and that's how they got in touch with me. But they flew me to New York, and I surprised him on the show live, and it was just a sheer delight. But Everett's probably the individual who has worked the most in some kind of performance area. But Cinda Williams, you know, she did Mo Better Blues with Denzel Washington on the cover of Vogue. I've had a number of students who have had professional careers or teaching careers in theater, and I'm very proud of all of them. And I feel like that's something that a teacher gets to experience that is so special, because you find kindred hearts and spirits and natures, and you can nurture them and they nurture you, and it's a real giving, positive situation. But I taught English too, and I didn't dislike that at all. Okay. That's why I can really appreciate a script like this that is so well written, and I don't like to do things that aren't.
Well, let's talk about the play and what should audiences expect, or if they're not familiar with the work, or what would you like someone to know going into coming to see this show?
Well, I think despite it was the Pulitzer Prize winning play in 1988. It's still very relevant today. We were talking last night about that too, and Larry had asked us, for quotes and things, and the couple of lines that resonate the most with me. Daisy says, "Isn't it wonderful the way things are changing?" Because she's going to the Martin Luther King dinner, the banquet, to honor him for the Nobel Prize, and it's the first biracial banquet in the South, probably, and certainly in Atlanta. And her just deep-seated prejudices that she doesn't admit, will never admit, and do evolve and change, provokes him to say...
and now you're going to call me on the line. But anyway, he realizes that things really haven't changed all that much. There's still a long way to go. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the comments I made last night. I see this play as, and I called back to Fences. Fences was about the fences we put around ourselves and the people that we care about, or the people that we don't, to keep them either close or at a distance. In this world, in Miss Daisy, there are these fences already around Hulk and Miss Daisy that separate them. And for me, this play is about deconstructing those fences. And finally, in the end, we realize that we're just people, and we are, in fact, kindred spirits. It's almost a love story, I think.
Of friendship and
Right. And I think breaking down the fences, because Daisy does not want a driver. Part of that is that she doesn't want to admit that she's too old to drive, and she's a danger to others and herself. And that having a chauffeur is really, that's in her face. She can't handle that. But then also her racial biases are a part of that too, and what she expects or doesn't expect. And Hoke breaks those all down. It takes him 25 years maybe, or a good 20 to do so.
The show spans over a long period of
25
time.
years, and I think that's interesting in itself.
And it, touches on some of the prejudices of the time, also towards your character. Also,
yes,
not
because she's an elderly Jewish woman, and the temple bombing is a background for one of the scenes
Yes.
when Hoke is driving her to the temple, as well as the Martin Luther King dinner.
But there's also some growth in Hoke as well. I mean, he takes his role as her chauffeur, and eventually he finds the strength to tell her that he is a man and he is worthy of more respect than she's willing to give him. And I think that's the big change for him in a play, and it might be a big change
Daisy
for
too.
for the relationship as well.
But you can see it changing
throughout the show.
Throughout the show, or at least I hope so. That's what I'm. At least Daisy is changing subtly, not always willingly.
Oh yeah, but at the beginning of the show, she's having none of it, and,
Right.
and then by the end, you're expected, just because as out of friendship, and
Right.
that
Right.
person's there for her. Anything else you'd like to say about the show, or?
Well, I think that people ought to get groups of 6 together, because you can get $12 tickets. I think that's
special group rates
right,
apply.
right.
Please
Only
call
6
the box
people.
office,
Right.
314-921-5678. Also featured in Driving Miss Daisy, there is one other character. There's
Yes.
3 characters. Ken Clark, who's been known to work on every facet of every show throughout the St. Louis area as well, is playing Miss Daisy's son, Booley, and who initially hires Hoke to drive for Miss Daisy. And I believe Ken is also the set designer for the
Right.
show.
Right.
This show has another all-star production crew, as Hawthorne usually does, directed by the Florissant Civic Center Theater's own Trish Nelke, and assistant director and stage manager Beth Workman, with costumes by Gene Heckman, and technical direction and set construction by Dennis Dudenhofer, lighting design by Bob Veach, sound design by Brian Borstead. These are all very familiar names to me, and if any of you are familiar with Hawthorne, that they are some familiar faces. I suggest you really come out and see Driving Miss Daisy by Alfred Urey.
Mm-hmm. And Ken doesn't always get an opportunity to act. He's
That's right.
often
He's often
directing
behind
or
the scenes,
designing.
yes.
But he's a fine actor. I learned that quickly in directing him in A Christmas Carol. And a fine director. We've all appreciated his work numerous times, especially for Nonsense, for which he was awarded, the best director,
Right.
best
And
show.
Ken has directed me prior to this twice, and in the play that we struggle with the name of, I believe it was Giving Up, Letting Go, and also in Hawthorne, The Best of Hawthorne. I did a monologue a couple years ago on that. But this is my first time with him as a scene partner, and fantastic.
Right. Right. We're all enjoying, I think, the opportunity to interact with people that we care deeply about as individuals, and then that enriches, I think, our scene.
Yes, I imagine. Yeah, okay. The Hawthorne Players are made up of volunteers, and I want to express that, and who take time out of their lives, and from their day jobs and from their families, in order to present professional quality productions at an affordable ticket price, nonetheless. Right here at our neighborhood in Florissant, and you should come out and support these devoted artists. Driving Miss Daisy opens November 4th. And has shows on the 4th, 5th, 11th, and 12th at 7:30 p.m. and close on November 13th with a 2 p.m. matinee. Before we finish today, the Hawthorne Players have announced their 2017 season, and we would like to just let you know a little bit about what some of those shows are. I don't know, Nancy, if you want to take the helm on this or not. I would be pleased to read little flyer sitting in front of me, but
Well, it opens with Love Letters, which is a two-person show and is based on the letters written by two childhood friends that, you know, continue their relationship till the death of one of them. And it is very poignant, I think. It will charm the audience, and I believe that Hawthorne Players is going to try an experiment in the staging of this show, which could be very exciting for the audience. And I won't reveal what that is. I'll let that be a part of their publicity release. But I think you wouldn't want to miss Love Letters. May have some people that you recognize in those two key roles. Then in their musical for the summer, July.
That show, Love Letters, is
March and April.
Opens at the end of March and runs in the first 2 weeks of April.
Right. And then in July, the end of July, 1st of August, Once Upon a Mattress, which is the Carol Burnett vehicle that everyone loves, based on The Princess and the Pea.
Yes.
And it's a delightful comedy, and the music is fun, and I know audiences will enjoy that. And then they close with the November 3rd, 4th, 10th, 11th, 12th Spitfire Grill. And I saw this, and it's just a charming musical.
Yes, it is.
And so this
I had
is
the
their
pleasure
small
of working
musical.
on that years ago, and
I just think it's delightful, set in Wisconsin, and you've got a curmudgeon
charming little cast
Oh
of
yes,
characters.
it is, and I
Some
think
beautiful music.
I think so. I think the audiences will love that as well, and the fact that they're doing two musicals, we know those delight audiences in general, but I think Spitfire Grill has a lot of substance to it as well, and so it's in the same slot that Daisy is this year, but I think people who like their drama will enjoy that particular musical because it's got opportunity for the characterizations to be very, very meaningful for audiences. And then I hear rumors that there's going to be a Cowboy Christmas tagging this wonderful season.
In December of next year.
Yes, yes. And so some may remember their earlier Cowboy Best of Hawthorne, but that was an audience just favorite. They loved it.
The Hawthorne Players also recently just ended their 2-weekend run of Voices of Valhalla,
right?
Which is a very unique program I've never had the pleasure to see because I'm always working on some other show on those same nights.
And it sells out very quickly.
Yes, so be on the lookout for that, come fall next year, and it's a really great thing to do for like sort of the Halloween season where it's sort of a historical trip.
Right, through history, using the people who were actually interred in Valhalla Cemetery. And Archie's done roles there, and I have too. And
it's an interesting experience. I've been out there once, and I'd love to do it again, but it can be a little chilly at night.
All right. Hawthorne Players season tickets are on sale now. You can get those by calling area code 314-368-9909 or visit them on the web at www.hawthorneplayers.com. Once again, I just want to encourage you to come out and see Driving Miss Daisy. This is going to be a real fine production. November 4th, 5th, 11th, and 12th at 7:30 p.m. and November 13th at 2 p.m. Nancy, Archie, thanks again for sharing with us today. It's been a pleasure. Now stay tuned for the calendar of events. Welcome back. We'd like to tell you about what's coming up at the Florissant Civic Center Theater. The Alpha Players will be holding auditions for To Kill a Mockingbird November 14th at 7 p.m. with callbacks November 15th if needed. Auditions will be cold readings from the script, and for more information, call 314-258-3018 or go to www.alphaplayers.org or check out the Alpha Players on Facebook. Later in November, the Florissant Fine Arts Council presents Fabulous Fanny, the songs and stories of Fanny Brice from Maiden Stage Artist Management, November 19th at 8 p.m. Kimberly Faye Greenberg now has created an intimate new Fanny Brice solo show. In Fabulous Fanny, Kimberly shares her extensive research to personally reveal Fanny's heart and humor, soul, and song. Along the way, you'll hear the familiar My Man, Secondhand Rose, Rose of Washington Square, Cooking Breakfast for the One I Love, When a Woman Loves a Man, and others that sparked Fanny's fame. Admission is $28 for adults, $26 for seniors and students, with group rates available. At the end of November, you're not going to want to miss the St. Louis Family Theater Series presenting A Christmas Carol from TheaterWorks USA, November 20th at 2 p.m., November 25th at 2 p.m., and November 26th at 2 p.m. This musical interpretation of the Charles Dickens classic captures both the humorous and touching moments of the classic story with witty dialogue and fresh new songs, conveying Dickens' original message that the holiday season should be a kind, forgiving, charitable time, a sentiment which still rings true today. Admission is $8 to all, and we do have special rates for Girl Scout troops, so if you give our box office a call and tell them that you've got a Girl Scout troop, and they'll give you a special discount just for you guys. And just make sure you let them know that you're from the Girl Scouts. And we do have a special seniors-only performance November 21st at 12 noon. Please call our box office at area code 314-921-5678 for any information about those shows, or visit us online at www.florissantmo.com. I'm Sean Robertson, and thank you for watching On Cue.